Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. AT&T is going to be lighting up more 5G spectrum, but it looks like that's going to be more for mobile and not for fixed wireless. Be right back. Hey, thanks for joining me. This is Rick Uzzi with Broadband Deployment News. So I saw this story. This was out from Mobile World Congress. AT&T's Mansfield touts midband 5G, but downplays standalone 5G. We'll talk about what standalone 5G is in a minute. So AT&T's midband 5G rollout started later and in a lower gear than either T-Mobile or Verizon's, but 2023 should see the carrier approach cruising speed on those fast frequencies. So we did see both, especially T-Mobile and Verizon really started going heavy into 5G service. And in both of their cases, were really a lot of it was focused on fixed wireless. T-Mobile does not have a fiber play, so that's their play for broadband in the home. And then Verizon really, while they're still deploying fiber, they've kind of pulled back on their Fios a little bit compared to really trying to make a play in the 5G world and get that out, because they can get that out quickly, much faster than they can on the fiber side. AT&T, though, had been sitting really on the sidelines with 5G because of some spectrum, and they have purchased spectrum, so they're going to now, looks like they're moving forward on some of that. So that forecasted sales pitch came from AT&T's Gordon Mansfield, the VP for Global Technology Planning, Network Planning and Engineering, during a meeting at the recent Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. But while the carrier expects 2023 to be a breakout year for its C-band and 3.54 or 45 gigahertz to 3.55 gigahertz spectrum, deploying standalone 5G and fixed wireless 5G remain lower order bits for the Dallas company. Again, I'll talk about that standalone in a minute. AT&T lit up its C-band spectrum last January alongside Verizon, but in far fewer places. Mansfield suggested that things will change by the end of 2023, saying the carrier is in good shape to hit its goal of covering at least 200 million people with midband by then. In particular, AT&T expects to get clearance from the FAA by the end of the year to light up the C-band near airports. So C-band is spectrum that was used primarily by satellite operators, actually, for, I think it was the downlink side. And a lot of that was unused. So the FCC worked with satellite operators on clearing out portions of that spectrum where they were able to take the satellite operations that we're doing and move that into a different, higher portion of the spectrum. And then that freed up the lower part, I think it was the lower part, for C-band spectrum. But there's still incumbents in there. And there were still concerns, actually, there weren't, that took the incumbents out, but there were concerns about the FAA and these altimeters, because the altimeters work on those same frequencies, and the FAA was concerned that some of these older altimeters would get interfered by the C-band, and that could cause safety issues. A lot of people in the industry came out and said, no, that's not going to be an issue. Others came out and said, hey, we don't want to see this. It's an issue. There's a lot of lobbying going back and forth, but they've been upgrading those altimeters, I think, to improve the shielding in some of those to maybe prevent some of this interference. And so that's been moving along. But that did put the brakes on both Verizon and AT&T for a while. But then they said, we'll wait for a month. I think they waited for a period of time. Then they said, well, we'll wait for one more month. And then Verizon started doing it, but AT&T kind of still kept holding back, I think because they just weren't ready to start doing this. So he said that should free up AT&T to expand the C-band beyond the 46 primary economic areas or PEAs allowed in the initial deployment of the C-band. So one thing the FAA was doing was around these airports trying to restrict C-band use there while they continued to work on this issue with the altimeters. We can pretty much by the end of the year get to use our licenses beyond those 46 PEAs. The picture looks more complicated for AT&T's 3.45 gigahertz spectrum, because of spectrum coexistence rules attached to the spectrum that AT&T bought for $9 billion in January 2022 through an FCC auction. For example, AT&T's top government regulators won't be able to enjoy its 3.45 gigahertz near their offices because of restrictions with some military applications. And in fact, they're talking about specifically, I think, Washington, D.C. here, and why they haven't lit up that major metro area. So in that spectrum, they do have some incumbents in military applications. And you see that with CBRS spectrum, although CBRS has a spectrum sharing arrangement where if you have, for example, somebody using unlicensed CBRS spectrum, then they consult with database basically on different kinds of parameters of that Wi-Fi, but then also there's a real-time basically spectrum sharing where if, like, say, a Navy ship comes into port and there's a wireless access point there, then they have to back off of that spectrum and use another portion of it. So there's spectrum sharing that goes on with CBRS. It says here, AT&T, however, plans to press on with an aggressive tower upgrade premium program that has it hanging separate C-band and 3.545 gigahertz radios simultaneously instead of waiting for dual band radios. So they are basically on the same towers. They're hanging both kinds rather than waiting for the equipment manufacturers to make dual band radios to handle both those spectrums. Things that can wait, millimeter wave, SA, and that's that, standard, what's it called? Hang on a second. Standalone 5G, sorry. So millimeter wave standalone 5G and fixed wireless access. Major geographic expansion, however, isn't in the cards for millimeter wave. Millimeter wave is really fast spectrum, and Verizon got some of that and started rolling it out in urban areas, and apparently AT&T has a lot of that spectrum. But it really is only suited for dense areas where you've got lots of customers because of limited distance that it can go and high attenuation. So you need line of sight. You can't pass through walls. You can't have any leaves in the way. Even moisture affects the signal. So millimeter wave is not the greatest for vast expanses of area. It's very fast, which is good, but again, it attenuates very easily. So that's not something that they're looking at right now. Instead, the carrier is using millimeter wave as a capacity enhancer in such high traffic venues as stadiums and arenas in our dense hotspot types of locations. And it's good for that because, again, it's dense and you can have small cells around that all have line of sight and you can get really fast access. So that's what they're looking at that for. For most subscribers looking to use high bandwidth applications in their own homes, meanwhile, AT&T continues to see its own fiber as the answer, not fixed wireless access. We've got the greatest amount of fiber of anybody in the US, Mansfield said, and when you get into your urban and suburban areas, we believe fiber is a better broadband solution, and certainly that is a better broadband solution there. You've got lots of customers that can help support the cost of laying that fiber and maintaining the network. So that's a great solution there, and they're certainly well positioned for that. He questioned the ability of fixed wireless to scale to meet demand, saying of T-Mobile's fixed wireless ambitions, they're going to struggle without access to a whole lot more spectrum than we see in the pipeline. And again, T-Mobile does not have any other play in the home for broadband. I mean, they've got their mobile service, and then they've got their fixed wireless service that uses the same spectrum. So T-Mobile, as they roll out fixed wireless, especially in areas that are, like here in the Atlanta area, they can provide it, but they say that it's limited, and they say it's limited everywhere because the spectrum is limited. So when they get a certain number of customers on fixed wireless access, then they're going to cut those off, basically, where they can't take any more customers unless they lose some customers, because they don't want to impact their big business, which is mobile, to cell phone service, basically. So T-Mobile is limited to that, but they are certainly going really heavy into the fixed wireless access market. They've got a nice device there that you can put in your home, something like $50 a month to have it, to have the service. There's no caps. You get relatively fast service on midband spectrum. It's not like millimeter wave, but you still can get really good broadband service on this midband spectrum that T-Mobile has. They've got a lot of licensed spectrum that they bought in the midband. Standalone, it says here, sorry, I skipped something else again here. That does not leave rural fixed wireless access. That does leave rural fixed wireless access on the map, as well as AT&T's new venture into business fixed wireless. We will have a hybrid strategy, Mansfield said. So, again, as he said, fiber makes a lot of sense in urban, kind of densely packed areas. But if you're in a rural area, sometimes it doesn't make sense, depending on how expensive it is, how much per mile to get that fiber in, or even just to be able to do it quickly, as I said. So they will certainly, I would think, look at fixed wireless access as a potential stopgap kind of measure in rural areas, or maybe even a permanent measure, depending on how expensive it would be to get fiber in some of these places. But certainly AT&T, somebody that offers both kinds of services, they could look at rolling out 5G fixed wireless in an area to try to lock down that area and lock competitors out. And then over time, that can give them the ability then to make the investment and do a fiber deployment there. That could be one option. Again, it could either keep it that way or maybe do fiber later because they can get that out much faster. When you think about standalone 5G from an enterprise perspective, that's the only use cases that are out there right now, he said. Now, standalone 5G, what that is, that's something that T-Mobile is touting. I think that they do. That's where you have what they call non-standalone 5G is where you take basically your LTE network, your traditional network, and then you put 5G radios out there. So you do have 5G service kind of going to the customer, last mile, so to speak. But your core network is not 5G. Standalone 5G is where your core network as well as 5G. So you've got basically 5G running the whole way. It's not overlaying stuff on top of your 4G network. And the non-standalone 5G, the issue there is that you don't get all of the benefits that you would get, let's say, on a standalone 5G network where the whole core and everything is 5G, where you're going to have more capacity and something else that's very important, which is low latency that 5G will bring you that you don't necessarily get on a non-5G or non-standard 5G network. So that's what AT&T is saying here, is that there's specialized kind of situations maybe for business where they might need low latency, but they don't see that for being a need for all their customers. And again, they're primarily what they're doing now with this 5G is rolling out to consumers on mobile and not necessarily even home users for that. So that's why they're not making a big deal out of that. So again, when he says, when you think about standalone 5G from an enterprise perspective, that's the only use case they see right now. And AT&T doesn't see the upside there for customers relative to risk to call quality. It does not give us the reliability that our customers really, really want. So I guess he's saying there, it doesn't make that much of a difference to their mobile users right now to be able to do that standalone 5G as opposed to the non-standalone 5G. So that's pretty much it. They talk about some Azure stuff here, but that's the information in this article related to their 5G aspirations and what they're doing. I've linked to that in the description below, so you can go ahead and take a look at that. So thanks for joining me. If this was helpful, if you give me a like on the video, I'd appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, ring the bell to be notified when I'm live. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.